Tappi from the European Investment Fund, EIF. I'm the Chief Investment Officer. We'll give now two sections in this event. One, a panel that will discuss the contribution of the European Venture Capital Fund, private equity and infra funds to the EU Green Deal. So pretty much what is being debated in all the pavilions here. Main purpose of this event is to kind of showcase what the EIF is doing, but more importantly, to hear from the real world the investments made by the fund managers in which the EIF has invested and by experts in the field. To start with, I will give the floor to Gelsomina Vigliotti, EIB Vice President and member of the EIF board, for the introduction to this event. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'll try to speak loud since, it's quite difficult to understand each other, but, this is the beauty to be in a very lively conference like this. So thank you very much for coming to this event. This is a great opportunity to us to present what we do as a European Investment Bank group, and in particular what the European Investment Fund does within the European Union Green Deal. The European Green Deal, it started 3 years ago in a completely different world. After that, we had the pandemic, we had the war. But in the end, the relevance of this strategy, it's actual, because actually what we had with the Green Deal is that we had to recognize innovation and sustainability as the major drivers of a sustainable growth. Also before the pandemic, Europe had an issue of productivity, and we had to invest in that. And so the EU Green Deal, it remains crucial for Europe, for all the countries, and also for what Europe can do outside of the European Union. As the Bank of the European Union, we have decided to accompany the EU Green Deal with an ambitious climate roadmap, with ambitious targets. We decided to have at least 50% of our financing dedicated to climate for 2025, and to achieve 1 trillion of investment in climate for 2030, actually doing it together with investors and partners, since our major role is that to be a catalyzer of investment. What we want to give, it's a signal to the market to attract resources, to provide what the public resources should provide to the market. That is the signal, the policy orientation. And today I'm very happy to present some concrete experience, because what happened after the pandemic, we went through a war which actually put at question the energy security in Europe, not only Europe, but mainly in Europe. And with that, we have another ambitious plan, which is the REPowerEU, to which the European Investment Bank want to contribute. And our board recently, 2 weeks ago, agreed on a package of 30 billion to accompany the REPowerEU. Actually, we will go through loans and equity to promote energy efficiency, to promote investment in renewables, and to finance breakthrough innovative technologies. We believe that this is our commitment there. We do not want to invest anymore in fossil fuels. We do not believe that this would be the right answer at this stage. And we believe that our contribution, the use of our resources, our public resources, would be good to be dedicated within this sector. And the European Investment Fund has a critical role to support fund managers like the one that we have today here, that invest in initiatives which can push on energy efficiency, on green tech, on the promotion of renewables. So sorry if I've been long, but I wanted to introduce this session, and we look forward very much to listen to this experience. And Alessandro Tappi, who is the Chief Investment Officer of the EIF, will drive us through this conversation, and after that through the signature of important contracts with our managers. Thank you.
Many, many thanks, Gelsomina. We start now with the panel. The panel will be with the first brief introduction on the EIF business model, and then we'll give the floor to the panelists. We have 3 distinct panelists, in 2 online and 1 in physical presence. So what is the EIF doing? What is the mission of the EIF? The mission of the EIF is to support SMEs, small and medium-sized companies in Europe. The focus of the fund is Europe. And the EIF business model, the way we operate, is what we call intermediated model. So we do not invest directly into companies. We do not finance directly an SME, but we provide such financing via financial institutions. We work with banks that provide loans to SMEs. In that case, we provide guarantees to the banks and other financial institutions. We invest in funds, equity funds, that in turn invest in the companies themselves. So our job is actually not to find the final SME that needs to be supported by the EIF. We look for financial institutions, fund managers that are able to do the job for us. And our specialty is to select them and do a proper due diligence on the way they work. We have 2 products. I already mentioned guarantees on one side and equity on the other side. On the equity side, which is the focus of today's discussion, we cover pretty much the full spectrum of investments from the very early stage, startup companies, even before the startup, when technology transfer comes from the academic world into a commercial world, through to venture capital, late stage growth, private equity, and private credit. We are investing in the funds deploy the money into the companies. We have also started last year, in continuation to what the EIB was doing before, investments in infrastructure funds. We call them infrastructure and climate fund, because the very important element of these funds in the EIF eyes is their contribution to the climate action. 75% of all the investments that we back in infra funds have a climate and environmental sustainability element. So extremely important that we support this. It could be energy renewables, it could be new ways of mobility in cities and so forth. The goal at the end is to mobilize private money. So the EIF is mostly using public resources. Those resources are combined and invested into funds that at the same time do fundraising with private investors. The result is that for each euro that the EIF puts at work, there will be between 5 and 10 euro that reach the final beneficiaries. That's what we call the multiplier, and it is the specialty of the EIF in its business model. As I said, today we focus on equity, and within the equity, we have chosen the theme of the climate and sustainability. So anything you will hear from now on comes from fund managers, experts on the field, that are in one way or the other linked to the climate and sustainability. The panel discussion will start now, and we will invite, let's say, the 3 fund managers to introduce themselves and to present briefly their funds. One of those is Michał Kurtyka. He's here in presence, so thank you very much, Michał. He's the strategy advisor of Eiffel Investment Group. Julia Padberg is the next one. She's strategy partner at CET Ventures, online presence, I think. Here she is. And Nicolas Piau, who is the co-founder and CEO of Tilt Capital. is also online to give us his views. Let me start with the first round of questions, fairly easy questions. I would like each of you to introduce yourself, and then we take it from there. Michał first, please.
Maybe. Hello? Wow, it's working. Can you hear me? We have a little bit of font noise behind, so I hope that we can still have a conversation, a meaningful discussion among us. So it's my great pleasure. You said presenting myself. I will start with myself then, and then Michał Kurtyka. Till October last year, I was first Polish Minister of Climate, and I was also previously running COP27 in Katowice. So right now I'm supporting also as much as I can this COP in Sharm el-Sheikh in order to help my Egyptian colleagues move forward with climate action on the global level. But after when I was minister, I was designing such plans, and you know, you have very beautiful documents, hundreds of pages, lots of analysis, etc. It's wonderful. You never touch reality, and you just sometimes consider that you change the world by the power of your thinking. And then I found myself with absolutely wonderful people, and here my publicity for Eiffel investment group. And my boss is Fabrice. Because I met people who were, when I was talking, they were doing. And right now Eiffel has 5 billion euro of investment and growing extremely fast in terms of energy transition only. You know, starting from biogas in Spain, wind in Poland, solar in France, hydrogen taxis in Paris, I mean all over Europe. At the same time that I was speaking, they were doing. And that is wonderful, because you started, President, by saying that we have a very difficult, very challenging time, war, COVID. And my position in this regard is that we need to accelerate the transition. We need to work quicker. When I discuss with colleagues from EIB, great support to Eiffel and enormous support and help at the beginning in terms of innovative financial tools. They said, okay, we will do very quickly right now 2 years from thought to finish. And right now we are accelerating and we are thinking about what next could be put in place. And you asked me about presenting myself and presenting Eiffel. Well, I'm still digesting all this chain of different elements. So, for example, the fund has invested into Eiffel 75 million euros for the last fund. This fund was a 500 million euro debt facility. And this debt facility was used and reused, so it allowed for investment of 1.4 billion euro. And then this 1.4 billion euro, as it was invested at a very early stage of investment, allowed the development of 4 gigawatt of new capacities in Europe. So that is the power of EIB Group. That is the power of money which is put rightly at the right moment, with right people at the right timing, and leveraging action behind. 75 million euros put on the table by the bank provided 4,000 megawatts of renewable power for Europe. That is absolutely impressive, and we are here to move this even further, and I'm very glad, but that is something that we will speak later on maybe.
Thank you very much, Michał. You said about transition, and we will be transitioning now to Julia. Julia, the floor is yours. introduce yourself, and as we go, you can also present the strategy of your fund, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Julia Padberg, a partner at Set Ventures. Set Ventures invests in digital technologies for a carbon-free energy system. And since 2007, so for 15 years already, we've built our reputation as Europe's leading independent energy venture capital investor. And the need for sustainable energy solutions has never been more clear. Our investment thesis revolves around three fundamental beliefs. The first is that responsibly managing how energy is generated, distributed, and used has become essential for all of us. The second is that a carbon-free energy system is unlocked by game-changing new business models and applications, not only by science and engineering. And the third is that companies built on digital technologies and data will create most value from this systemic change. And we see that energy is really everywhere and everything is connected, not just at a technical level, but more broadly in a future energy system that rewards all participants to balance what you give and what you get in a fair way. So at Set Ventures, we invest in innovative leaders that are transforming the energy system and pioneering the future of energy in distributed infrastructure, digital utilities, smart buildings, mobility, electric mobility, and industry, as well as relevant enabling technologies. So we look for fast-growing startups and scale-ups with a strong digital DNA, seeking growth capital. And we exist to support these pioneering entrepreneurs with capital, community, and insights to reach their ambition. So we guide these companies actively on their journey through our expertise and our network in this sector, and we can help founders tap into first-class support in areas like business development, hiring, operational expertise, fundraising, and exit strategy, for example. So our three venture capital funds of jointly 200 million are backed by approximately 20 investors. And the European Investment Fund has been our lead investor in Fund 2 and Fund 3, and hopefully also in future funds. So together with EIF, we have co-developed our impact framework, for example. And this impact framework involves a scientific methodology to measure and support climate impact amongst our portfolio companies. And it also involves that as the first fund manager in Europe, Set Ventures has linked our own remuneration as a fund manager to achieving these impact targets. And that has really been a co-development with EIF. So we are very thankful for all the support from EIF and also for the pioneering cooperation with EIF on this matter. Thank you.
Many, many thanks, Julia. You've heard and understand that the first fund we were talking about, the Eiffel Investment Group, is an infrastructure fund. This one, presented by Julia, is a venture capital fund in clean tech. So it's already moving from one asset class to the other. And we move to the third one. Nicolas Piau will talk about it. And here we're talking private equity fund. So investment in not early stage companies, but companies that are in the profitable area and actually growing into internationalization, globalization, and so forth. And the floor is yours, Nicolas.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, and hi everyone. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Nicolas Piau, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tilt Capital. We co-founded this company. It's a pure entrepreneurial adventure of the private equity. We left NG in 2018 to actually start that company on the basis of the diagnosis that there's a dramatic lack of growth capital in Europe. It's lagging behind the US, lagging behind Asia, and this is one of the reasons why we have an issue scaling up from early venture capital to mid caps and larger companies. One of the reasons why we set up this fund was really because we thought there was a real need for industrial expertise to bring to the sector. So I've spent 18 years at NG. I was the global head of M&A and corporate development. My partners were also former NG executives. And the goal of our fund was really to deploy growth capital tickets in European companies at this stage of growth capital. We have a specific industrial thesis, I would say, which is actually linked to energy efficiency on the one side, industrial and building efficiency. And the other one is flexibility management and intelligence of the energy system. The idea being that as renewables grow, it requires a drastic change in the management of the energy system. So our goal is to say we can't just decarbonize the production, we need to decarbonize and render more efficient the whole energy system. The fundamental belief behind that is to say that if we only tackle climate change and we fail to tackle the social issues coming from the energy transition, we will probably hit a roadblock. And so this is something where I think we met very strongly with EIF and EIB, who are big supporters of TILT. It was our first fund. I think, to be very clear, without EIB and EIF, we wouldn't be there. You did do very strong due diligence, and I think it was also a strong vote of confidence for other players, for other investors. But I think where we converge with the fact that the just transition is central to our strategy as well as to the EIB group strategy. And like Julia was saying, we're linking 25% of our carried interest to ESG performance. That was seminal in our discussion, in the sense that it was already in our documentation as soon as 2018 when we kickstarted the fund.
Thank you, Nicolas. Well, a first thought, a reaction to these useful comments. And we limit ourselves to the energy sector, renewable energy, energy efficiency. We need infrastructure. We need a major investment in infrastructures for energy in Europe. We need to increase the technology element and the innovation element in the production and saving of the energy. So the new startup companies that are coming up very much these days with new ideas will shape the world of tomorrow in terms of usage of energy, and hopefully green energy. The last point is that not only you need the technology and the clean tech, you need to deploy this technology into the ongoing concerns, the companies that every day produce all the goods that we consume. And this is the second stage of the intervention, the one that requires the private equity funds coming in. I would move to the next question, which is a kind of follow-up question to what we just said. And it is about the impediments, what we see as obstacles, main obstacles in the current situation for scaling up the investments in the energy. And again, I would ask Michał to start with, and then we do the tour. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, with my past of COP president and Minister of Climate, I can tell you that we do not have procedures fast enough, taking into account how fast the world is right now changing. COVID, war in Ukraine, it should give, let's say, a boost in terms of our rethinking of how fast we want to deploy new technologies. And as you said, infrastructure is critical. If we don't have new technologies, if we don't have new capacities of energy production in Europe, then it will be à la merci of hydrocarbons from Russia. And then we as a continent, we will continue to be really, really in trouble. And it's not only the question about next winter, it's the question about next 2 or 3 winters. So we need absolutely right now to put dedicated instruments, financial instruments, in order to accelerate the transition to renewables. So in this regard, we have been working actively together with colleagues from EIF on a dedicated tool for Central Europe. Why Central Europe has the highest dependency ratio on Russian gas? So this is where it has been very much hit. Europe has been very much hit. Then, of course, we have big markets in Europe which are dependent still on Russian gas. Whether we are talking about Italy or Germany, these are big volumes, less in terms of percentage dependence because it's a little bit more diversified. But this is where we need to put absolutely the focus. And it's not, we are not talking about 2030 perspective. We are talking right now about 2024, 2025 winters that we need to be ready. So we need to deliver dedicated instruments. And we need on the other side to do a lot of work in terms of permitting on the side of European Commission and national governments in order to help also accelerate the transition to new technologies. Then, of course, we have to be a little bit more open to new technologies, to experimentation, to new business models, to startups, to very different setups. It will be getting tough this winter. Lots of flexibility will be needed, lots of energy efficiency, lots of creativity. And so we need also, as financial community, to be very creative in the coming months.
Many thanks, Michael. I have a follow-up question for you. You refer to the current situation with the war in Ukraine and so forth. This bodes well with the question I have on energy security. What is your view about ensuring that there is sufficient security in our systems?
Well, taking a little bit even a higher perspective, I was COP24 president and I struck a deal in Katowice at that time between Europe, China, US, and developing countries. And right now when I discuss with my colleagues here in Egypt, they are confronted with a very different world, a fragmented world, a world which is entering into a phase of chacun pour soi, everybody is doing for himself. And this has an impact on energy, and energy plays a crucial role in this redefinition of global world order. So we are moving also from global supply of energy to local energy. And so we need also to be able to develop local production of energy in Europe, which will be independent of hydrocarbon imports. And this, in this regard, renewables are playing absolutely a crucial role, and energy infrastructures are playing absolutely a crucial role. And in this regard, and I will end up with referring to your question about energy security, climate concerns for the first time are increasingly linked with energy security concerns. Going for renewables, going for zero emission energy is at the same time reducing our emissions and is increasing Europe's resilience to external shock, especially to fragmented supply of hydrocarbons from the world.
Thank you. I would now ask Julia to follow on the same question. So what are the main impediments you see to scaling up investments in the areas that you're targeting? And how do you see also the EIF role in this respect? And particularly if you can say some words about your views on the regulation, how the regulation impacts, influences, for the good and the bad, the industry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So clearly the world today faces many problems apart from climate change, like inflation, war, and an energy crisis. So my fear is that these real-time issues will blind leaders and policymakers from much greater perils of climate change and the energy transition that needs to happen. So it would be really bad if this results in backpedaling COP27 ambitions rather than doubling down on them. And this scenario would be really detrimental for the medium to long term. So what I believe what we need is a market environment and a necessary infrastructure for the existing technologies to be able to actually be implemented. So thankfully, the majority of necessary climate technologies have already been invented and even proven at scale. And the good news is that they're exponentially becoming cheaper. So the next step towards a carbon-free economy will be unlocked by these new business models and applications. So governments, along with Eiffel Investment Group, need to invest in the underlying infrastructure, very important. But mainly governments should also set the financial incentives for market players to deliver on the necessary climate action themselves. And this involves many different things. So out of many courses of action that global leaders should be taking at COP27, I'll highlight just a few measures that would really enable the climate tech community to do the heavy lifting together with their customers. So first of all, governments should implement market-based financial incentives for low-carbon supply chains and energy balancing mechanisms. This would massively reduce the public capex requirements and permit the integration of millions of additional variable clean energy sources into the energy system. Secondly, countries should further sharpen energy efficiency targets in the buildings, industrial and construction sectors. Plug-and-play monitoring, analytics and automation solutions can then unlock the quick climate wins at low costs. And thirdly, through excise duties, leaders should promote the transition from diesel generators and engines towards sustainable energy storage solutions. And this includes accelerating the transition towards clean transportation through a reduction of existing tax exemptions for oil and kerosene. So these three are, of course, very well-known and obvious courses of actions, but one less eminent and very practical low-hanging fruit is to specify the COP27 announced targets and mechanisms for hourly carbon markets instead of the existing annual carbon markets. So big tech firms like Google and Microsoft and a few European companies are already leading by example. But if governments create the right incentives and regulatory framework for this, all companies in the economy can work towards operating on a 100% carbon-free basis every hour of the day. And in this light, I believe that leaders around the world should really challenge the European Parliament on its very recent act to scrap hourly PPA rules for green hydrogen, or green as it's supposed to be. Because this decision removes the need for additional renewable energy to be used every hour to produce green hydrogen. So just like biofuels in the past decade, I believe that green hydrogen can really become a textbook example of greenwashing, as it will immensely add to the CO2 emissions rather than remove them if we don't change this rule. So from the 1,000 terawatt hours per year of electricity would be needed to meet Europe's hydrogen goals of 20 million tons by 2030. And if grey electricity is used the whole year and then compensated by one annual green certificate, tens of millions of tons of CO2 are at stake here. So I really believe the clock is ticking here for reverting to the original plans of the European Commissions for 24/7 hourly PPA rules, as final negotiations are starting in the coming weeks.
Many thanks, Julia. I have one slight question to add to what I asked before. And you mentioned greenwashing, which we are all scared about, and we certainly want to avoid it. Do you have any view to share on how the European regulation works in that respect?
Yeah, so the European legislation for this is being written as we speak, because this is, of course, green hydrogen is something that will be produced at a mass scale in future from 2027 onwards, and not yet as of today. But then the question is, will green hydrogen be green if you can use grey electricity from the grid and then buy a cheap annual green certificate from, for example, from Norway, a hydropower plant? Or will it be green if you actually use green electricity at every hour of the day for producing that green hydrogen? Because in that case, you really do require all the renewable energy infrastructure for that. And then there will not be a case of greenwashing. But that's but the matter of the legislation for what is allowed to be called green hydrogen, that is something that the European Commission is defining as we speak.
Indeed, we all learn by doing. floor is yours, Nicolas. If you can share your views again on the impediments and maybe give a special touch on the financing gap or the major financing gaps you see in the markets.
Sure. It's obviously a complex issue, and I will try to make the link with my past experience or my past background. I do share part of the enthusiasm and the optimism, but I would introduce a pinch of caution there. When we see that we basically need to add 300 billion investments every year to reach the goals of the REPowerEU plan, and I think, of course, these goals need to be met. We absolutely need to make sure that people understand that that will translate into a cost. And I think, I've heard recently that the European trilemma was actually rendered voided by the drop in the cost of renewables. I personally don't think so, because my experience in the energy sector is that when we liberalized the market, prices went up. When we said that renewables would lead to a decrease in the cost, it actually did not materialize because it reduced the cost in some times of some period of the year where you had negative prices, and it increased dramatically the prices in the peak hours. And so I think we need to be extremely careful in what we say. I think people are ready to hear a number of things to make sure that we have security of supply, to ensure that decarbonization happens. But I think we also need to speak a discourse of awareness of what this transition will mean. We are transitioning the largest, most complex industrial system in the world. It will come at a cost. And I think this is super important because one of the main impediments, in my view, is if ever that leads to creating wider gaps in terms of social cohesion, in terms of social inequalities. And so one impediment, in my view, is if we forget that apart from the investment world, there's also the social world. And I think Europe has to play a role in compensating for the most vulnerable on this. How, I don't really know, and I would say this is not necessarily my expertise, but I am absolutely convinced that if we move, as we are seeing today, from an average 12% of energy poverty to 25% energy poverty, there is no way this is going to be I would say, a positive factor for energy transition. The second thing that I would say is I'm looking at what's happening in the US with the IRA. And here I'm going to take a stand on Europe needs a common budget. Why is the US in a position to actually adopt a 1.3 trillion plan plus a 2-point-something trillion infrastructure plan? Because they have a federal budget. And I think the EIB and EIF are doing an incredible job in catalyzing money from private equity, from private sector in general. And I think this is, hopefully, and we tend to forget that the EIB is the largest multilateral in the world, but this does not come close to the power of the American budget when it comes to pushing for new technologies, for new business models, that Julia was saying, etc. And I would really call for this beefing up of the European budget so that we are up to the stakes that are happening here. And the third one, I will end with this, and Julia also alluded to the greenwashing. I think one of the issues is that, again, energy is also about physics and chemistry. And at some point, if we want to decarbonize, we will need to enter into complex systems, and we will make mistakes. To be clear, we will make mistakes. And I think I don't remember who said, we will all learn by doing. I think it's exactly right. Both regulators, investors, entrepreneurs, we will learn by doing mistakes. And I think today we're on Article 9.3. We have a decarbonization ambition. We want to align our portfolio on the Paris Agreement trajectory. And I shouldn't be saying that publicly, but I don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it. Methodologically, we are working on this. We are putting a lot of effort on this. We really don't have a clue. We're looking at SBTI, we're looking at TCFD, we're looking at all those amazing initiatives that are providing some guidance. When you translate that into the small mid-cap world, very diversified type of industries, it is very difficult to come up with a reliable methodology to say we are aligning with the Paris Agreement. And so we need to be extremely careful to not announce things that could backlash, but we also need to recognize that we need to take a little bit of risk, saying here's our best intentions, and maybe our best intentions won't translate into the results we expect, but at least we're trying. And I think we should all, as an ecosystem, regulators, investors, entrepreneurs, politicians, etc., recognize this.
I very much agree with you, Nicolas. It's better to get 80% right than doing nothing. I would like now to close the panel and wrap up. Couple of thoughts. I found it very interesting, stimulant discussion. Energy transition is the one that will occupy our minds, policymakers' minds, investors' minds for the next 3 to 5 years for sure. Beware of greenwashing and all the traps that come together with this. Role of regulation in making sure that this is not just a red tape, but it's a useful guideline for all the market participants. We are learning by doing. The methodology, the EU taxonomy is in the making, but at the same time we are using it. We are imposing the EU taxonomy to our fund managers when we say we want to see climate investments. But these climate investments are defined in a way that is evolving, and hopefully for the right way. And closing, but very importantly, the major financial challenge that is ahead of us, ahead of our corporates, ahead of our public finance, goes together with the social dimension. And even more so because we are in an economic environment that is not particularly stable. Uncertainty is probably on top of the concerns that any fund manager has today. So we need to make a financial effort at the same time. If we fail, we will face a bigger problem also on the social element. I close here. Thank you very much for the interventions.
Thank you.
And if the technical support allows, I would like to give the floor now to Astrid Bertels from the European Commission that will make some comments on the green aspects. The European Commission has given a very large mandate to the EIF. We are investing these resources together with other funds, and I think it's good to give the floor to Astrid for this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Alessandro. Indeed, climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our times, and we have a duty as policymakers to act with determination. With the European Green Deal, the Commission set out already in 2019 a vision for Europe to become the first climate neutral continent, and with the Fit for 55 package that was adopted in 2021, we aim to make the EU's climate, energy, transport and taxation policies fit for reducing net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to the 1990 levels. But following Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the European Commission adopted Repower EU as the Union's plan to make Europe independent from Russian fossil fuels well before 2030. And as Alessandro already alluded, InvestEU is the Commission's
flagship investment program for the period 2021 to 2027, for which we provide support in the form of debt or equity. And with the support, we crowd in other public and private investors. And we are very happy to have the EIF as our main implementing partner for this program in this respect. I'm also very glad that out of the 5 funds with which transactions are going to be signed today, 4 actually do receive backing from the InvestEU program. And I would like to wish the best of success to all of the funds that benefit and that are presented today, and to our implementing partner, the EIB and the EIF. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Astrid. It's a good introduction to the actual list of funds and fund managers that we are signing today. So first, 5 funds that are signed at the same time with the same thematic objective is quite an event for the EIF. We have put together different areas in terms of investment focus, geographical focus, stage of the fund, but all together they are aiming for an energy transition and energy efficiency element. The first fund in which we are investing and signing today is called Growth Blue. Miguel Hereida is the manager that should be online. And this is a private equity fund. Private equity that invests in the blue economy. Blue economy becomes part of the green economy. And we just label differently, but it is a fundamental element that goes together with the intervention on our oceans and on the sustainability of their wildlife. We invested only 28 million. I'm saying only because I'm very proud of the multiplier effect of the EIF investments, and the fund is targeting a total fund of 50 million. 50 million blue economy is quite an achievement already. The second is Pure Terra Ventures. As the word says, this is a venture capital, early venture capital fund, and invests in technology. But what technology? Water technology. It's the first time the EIF invests in a fund that has a specialization in water technology. We are not talking about maintaining a pipe, we are talking about new technologies applied to the water sector. And the global demand for water is probably the one that is increasing more exponentially than any other element. Food is probably the second one, but water is definitely the one that, on the one hand, supply does not serve already today the demand, and the sources, the springs, are getting more and more polluted. So we have less water, a clean water available, and higher demand. So there is a fair amount of intervention that is required there. Third fund, Zintinus. We have Olaf Koch, who is the founder and managing partner that is also online. Again, a venture capital fund. Geographical focus here, it's pan-European, so spanning throughout, let's say, the European countries. And it is about food, sustainable food. So what I said before about water, I can repeat with the food. Food is a source of waste of energy and resources. It is the one that is projected to increase by at least 60% between now and 2050. And it has a very important social impact. So if I think globally, all the migration elements that we have seen over the past years are largely driven by the fact that you need food to stay where you are. The next one is Summa Capital. This is an infra fund, infrastructure fund, and it is a fund that invests in Spain, infrastructure investments in Spain. It's energy transition, it's energy efficiency, it is smart mobility. So anything that helps saving energy, making best use of energy, and producing clean energy. And finally, we have again Eiffel in our group here. this time is Fabrice Dumontet. Thank you for being here. That will be part of the signing event. And it is an infrastructure fund here as well. Greenfield solar photovoltaic panels and windmills. So with this, I think we have covered pretty much whatever we could find that is useful for the discussion. I'll now ask the colleague to help me with the logistics, to put a signature on the signataire. I think it's now the time for a virtual handshake with all of us. Online, the fund managers that are on screen have been doing the virtual signing themselves, so we can join forces and celebrate for a second this moment, a very topical moment for myself and for the EIF. Thank you very much to everybody. And now we are at the closing statements of this discussion. And for this, I would like to ask the French Vice President Ambroise Fayolle from the bank and member of the EIF board to share with us his thoughts and conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. And don't worry, I'm not going to be long. I think this COP is COP about implementation. And we are exactly there. This is about implementation of delivering the promises that we have made to do more projects related to climate and environment. And actually, what I found very interesting in you're right, Alessandro. It's not at all usual to do 5 signatures like this for climate funds. So congratulations to the teams. Congratulations to our colleagues in all the institutions that have achieved this. I like the variety of what has been presented. It covers a lot of what we do at the EIB Group to achieve our big ambition to become the EU Climate Bank. And it is about renewable, it's about infrastructure, it's about energy efficiency. It's about, actually, I like very much what was said about social investments. That is something that is essential to achieve also the climate targets. And we intend to do more because with the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the decision that has been taken in Europe is to speed up investments in especially renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is what we call Repower EU, and that is a strategy that is going to allow EIB, EIF to be more active in financing funds, to have Europe more present in climate investment, but also more independent from other sources of energy. So I am extremely pleased to have been here. I think what we are doing here with these funds is good for climate, it's good for all the action that we need to do for climate, it's good for innovation, and it's also something that we want to develop, so please don't hesitate to present your excellent funds and it's also good to include the private sector that we know we need to involve if we want to achieve the targets. So well done and enjoy the COP here. This is quite active, quite vocal, but very interesting. Thank you.